Vision Made Practical. There was a book put out years ago where you could read mission statements and you would never know which company it was because every mission statement sounded exactly the same. It was all the same stuff. It lived on a wall. It lived in no one's heart. You know, it just didn't matter. It was the same things that I look at as the base standard of why you should be in business, you know, just what the minimum criteria is instead of something that people could really look to and show up differently for. So when I look at my very first mission statement that we had for a company called Ingenuity, it was the partners that died in a plane crash that were part of that company. When I read the very, very first version, I just did this in a team retreat, and it was like, we want to be the preeminent, financial firm in the state of Utah by delivering unparalleled customer service and education and blah, 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 right? Didn't mean anything. And then I look at the next iteration, and every single iteration we've had got more concrete, it mattered more, and it's not like we have to recruit heavily. People want to work with us simply because of our vision. They like this concept of 1 million entrepreneurs being liberated and freed to get to economic independence. They love the thought of changing someone's financial future and their family's destiny so they're not born into bondage, but instead they have a system that helps to translate values, that translates mindset, philosophy, so the next generation can build a system where they pay interest back to the family rather than the institutions. Just in the short term, what do we want to do by 2020? We want 10,000 people to be able to buck the banking system and not need to use it anymore. They have their own system. We want 2,000 people to have a high-level virtual family office, even though they're not worth $50 million or more. See, I've had so many consultants tell me, why don't you just work with the highly affluent, because then you don't have to have as many clients. Because here's the problem. We've had clients worth $500 million. They were the most pain-in-the-ass client, not because of them, but because of their CFOs and every financial person that hit them up. Or we worked with NFL players for a little while. That was the worst business decision I've ever made, because I sat in so many meetings with the dumbest ideas pitched to these NFL players where they're like, this sounds really good. I'm not even a good negotiator, but one of those meetings, this person was going to do a line of credit for $2 million for this business that was a startup, and they were going to get 2% ownership. And this guy's telling me, he's like, I'm going to be involved in this business one way or the other. These are people I care about. I'm like, great, at least let me get you a better percentage. He had 51% by the end of the day. Probably if Norm would have negotiated, it would have been like 75%, but I was feeling so good going from 2% to 51%, but I was like, we don't have time for this. And when we have these really high affluent people, I'm like, look, there's family offices that will take care of them, that can really help them out. But you know what? I want to work with more people than that. I don't want to impact 10 people over my lifetime. I want to impact 1 million over my lifetime.